Welcome to this episode of Shabbat with a Schmear, or should I say, virtual Shabbat with a Schmear. As I'm here with Meredith Berkman, Shabbat Mom, but we're here in the virtual Barney Greengrass. Meredith, welcome to this episode, and we look forward very soon to returning to the real Barney Greengrass and kibitzing as we always do with Barney and all his people there in the shop.
With Gary, absolutely. As they say, from your mouth, Rabbi Mintz, soon.
That's right. Barney is there in spirit. Gary's the one we kibitz with.
Exactly.
This week's portion is Chukat. And in a lot of ways, it's the most tragic portion in the entire Torah. Because Moses, the leader and the one who's been the superstar of the Torah since he's introduced at the beginning of the book of Shemot, Moses sins and he's punished and he's not able to leave the land. Now, that in itself is a tragedy. But it's even worse when we think about the fact that as you read the story this week, it's not even entirely clear exactly what Moses does wrong. What does he do? He hits the rock rather than speaking to the rock. He criticizes the people. And what do you make of the fact that Moses isn't perfect and the fact that we're not even sure what that imperfection is?
Well, and I'll just read it very quickly. God is very specific. He says he and Aaron should gather the people. He'll produce water from them from this rock. He doesn't say you'll talk to the rock. He says you'll produce water. He doesn't say how. Am I wrong about that?
That's correct.
Right. And Moses takes the rod from before the Lord as he had commanded him, and they get everyone. And then Moses looks like he sort of loses his sense of balance, right? He says, "Listen, you rebels." Like, what's up with you? "Shall we get water from you out of this rock?" And he raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. So I guess you could parse it and say, "You shall produce." Did Moses misunderstand how he was supposed to produce? That's not the way it is, right? What I read this is, Moses, he uses the word rebels. He's so frustrated and angry with the people. He's at the end of his rope. So rather than assume that God will create this miracle without any effort on Moses's part, that this is God's will, he seems to exert a force that maybe the message is that the force, if you use a show of force to get the water that God has told you is coming out, are you, at least publicly, is it like a Kilol Hashem, you're appearing to say that there must be force from man to have action from God? Whatever the reason is, I know when my son in particular, Kalev, was little, he was so upset. "Mommy, how could God take away Moshe's right to go into the land after all he's been through?" Because he hit the rock, he didn't speak to the rock. But I actually think, as tragic as it is also one of the most profoundly uplifting moments in the Bible in another way, which is, if we know at the end of the Bible that there never was a man again who had that kind of relationship with God as Moses did, those are the words at the end of the year that always make me cry. There never lived a man like Moses. We see he's flawed too, right? There's no perfect human. There's no perfect human. Only, my father always taught me, only God is perfect. And that should give us the relief and self-acceptance in the face of our own many failures and foibles and weaknesses, because even Moshe Rabbeinu was flawed. So we have to be forgiving of ourselves. Nobody is perfect. That gives me hope.
That's a wonderful lesson. I mean, especially you say the golden book, the magic book is always relevant, in today's time when there's so much uncertainty. So you say, we need to be humbled and to recognize that everyone is flawed. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is going to react, to the situations of today exactly right the way we're supposed to. There's no book that says this is the way you deal with quarantine for 4 months. That's just not the way the world works. And, Moses Moses teaches us that it's okay to be flawed, that even Moses was flawed. And maybe as we go on in the Torah, what we'll see is, how does Moses rebound from his sin and from his punishment? Because we know in life, that's really the hardest thing of all. Not so much to realize that we're flawed, but how do we rebound? Some people rebound well, some people don't rebound so well. And we live in a time that we're all going to need to rebound. So
reimagine,
rebound, the new normal. Everybody has a term for what's going to be needed, but we need to all be part of the solution. And I think that Moses, this week Moses is punished, but as we go on in the Torah, we're going to think about what that new normal is going to look like.
Well said again. Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.